Welcome to the Let Me Bend Your Ear podcast. My name is Frank. I'm the host of the show. On this podcast, I discuss and review movies new and old. You can listen to this show wherever you get your podcast, and I would ask if you would subscribe and rate and review. If you subscribe, you'll get notifications when new episodes become available. You can view this podcast on the following video channels: Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, and X. I ask if you do watch the podcast, if you can click and subscribe to those channels there. On YouTube, Rumble, and X, you'll get notifications when the show goes live. So if you could do that, I would appreciate it. Also, if you're a fan of the show, I would appreciate if you would repost my post on X, engage there on social media, and also rate and review wherever you listen or watch this podcast. That'll help increase the viewership and listenership of the podcast, which is one of my goals of this year, 2025, is to increase this audience. I want to thank the people that have downloaded and have listened to the show or watched the show. The numbers have been consistent, always looking to grow them. So if you are a fan of the show, I would ask if you would just recommend it to other people that are maybe looking for a movie review podcast. Also, trying to solicit people that can financially support the show. There is a cost that's associated with putting the podcast on, streaming software, the website, things like that. So if you could do that, that'd be great. If you click right up here on this Q code, if you're watching on the left, or you can go to my X page, which is at Bend Your Ear Pod, and you can click on the tip jar there if you are able to click financially. Also, and I'll ask at the end of the show, if anybody is interested in coming on to discuss movies, please reach out to me. The email is bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com, or you can DM me on X. Again, that handle is at bendyourearpod, and that is also the handle for Instagram. All right, on today's episode, I'm going to review The Straight Story. Now, the director David Lynch recently passed away, and he's a renowned director. Obviously, he's really well known for his singular style of filmmaking, and obviously, his body of work: Eraserhead, Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, Wild at Heart, and of course the iconic television show Twin Peaks, and the movie that he made, which is actually one of my favorite David Lynch films, Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me. I'll review that movie on another pod at some point. That movie is, I think, brilliant for me, and it's probably my favorite David Lynch film. I haven't seen all of his films. I haven't seen Eraserhead. I saw Blue Velvet a long time ago, which is what kind of brought him into the mainstream consciousness, or at least the film community consciousness, as a singular filmmaker. And obviously, he had his original version of Dune as well. But Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me is I was quite impressed with that film, and how it kind of broke away from the TV show. But again, I'll get into that on another episode. But instead of all those films, because I've seen Twin Peaks: Fire Walk with Me, Wild at Heart, Mulholland Drive, and Lost Highway. I've also seen The Elephant Man, which actually was the first David Lynch film I saw when I was young. That movie came out in 1980. It starred John Hurt and Anthony Hopkins, and it is an incredibly moving film based on the true story of a gentleman that was born, obviously, severely disfigured. It's an emotional, powerful film. And that's another one I'll probably review as well. And kind of like Straight Story, before Straight Story came out, that was probably his most accessible film, in the sense that it told a straightforward narrative. There wasn't a lot of the things that Lynch had incorporated in his other works. So Straight Story came out in 1999. I saw it shortly after it came out. I didn't see it in the movies. I saw it on video. And what was notable about it at the time, and they made a big deal about it, is this is a Walt Disney Productions film, and the film is rated G. Now, Walt Disney and rated G are two things that you do not associate with David Lynch. So that alone makes it unbelievably interesting. And the second thing about it was, once the reviews started to come out, the reviews were overwhelmingly positive and discussed what a fantastic, moving, simple story that was told beautifully. So that made me want to see it. And like I said, I saw it, close to when it came out. So I probably saw it about 25 years ago. And then I just watched it recently now for the podcast to get a rewatch. And again, as I stated in my previous episode that I posted with my cousin Vinny, It's great when you get to rewatch a movie that you haven't seen in a very long time, because it's almost like a new experience. Like there's things you remember, but there's a lot of times things you don't remember. And The Straight Story, I've only seen one other time before, so definitely rewatching it is like really watching it again for the first time, which is great. All right, so The Straight Story is based on a true story, and the story is about Alvin Straight, who is an elderly man that lives in Iowa, Lawrence, Iowa. And he finds out that his brother, who lives in Wisconsin, has suffered a stroke. And Alvin and his brother have been estranged for 10 years, haven't spoken to each other. They had a huge fight and led to their estrangement. Now, when the movie opens, Alvin has fallen in his home and he's having severe health problems. And he's in his 70s, and he goes to the doctor. He's got his hips are bad. He can't get up on his own. He's got to walk with the use of two canes. He's losing his vision. And he's just not in, he's not in good health. So he finds out about his brother's stroke, and he makes the decision that he needs to go see him. Now, his middle-aged daughter, Rose, played by Sissy Spacek, lives with him. So you would think, hey, she could take him for a ride, but he decides that he wants to go on his own. Rose can't drive because she is, and the film doesn't specifically say what it is, but she is mentally challenged, and but very smart, knows facts, knows dates, but obviously she's got some kind of mental impairment, and she stays and lives with her father. So he can't drive, obviously because of his sight and his health. So he decides to take his lawnmower, hook up a little rig to it, and tells Rose that he's going to make the trip on his lawnmower from Iowa to Wisconsin, which is a 240-mile journey. And the top speed of this lawnmower, of course, is about 5 miles an hour. So do the math. It's going to take him a few weeks to get there. Of course, his daughter's not happy about it. His friends in Iowa are not happy about it. They think he's kind of nuts. But as played by Richard Farnsworth, Alvin is in old school in the full sense of the word. He's stubborn. He's going to do what he's going to do, and he's not going to be talked out of it. So that's essentially the setup of the film. It's not any more complicated than that. So he sets off on his journey, and the movie tells that story. He has obstacles along the way. One of the early obstacles is he barely gets out of town and his old lawnmower breaks down. So he has to get towed back to his town, and then he ends up purchasing a 66 John Deere lawnmower to start his journey again. So when you hear that, you're thinking, I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, okay, so this is a movie about him making a 240-mile journey on a lawnmower. That sounds boring. And I can understand that thought upon hearing the plot of this film. And I'm very happy to tell you that that is not the case at all. So the screenplay written by Mary Sweeney, who was a frequent collaborator with Lynch, and she actually edited the film as well. It's a beautiful screenplay. And the way the film plots points are laid out as he goes on his journey, he encounters several people along the way of his journey that he interacts with. And that really fills in what you would think would be just an old guy riding a lawnmower. And it's very deep. It's very simple. And this is, and normally I would get into the performances a little after I give the plot, but that's basically the plot. I've given you the plot. He's going to go see his brother, and he's not going to be stopped by anything or anyone. The performance is starting with Richard Farnsworth as Alvin Straight. Now, Richard Farnsworth has been in the movie business for decades, and I only knew him late in the 80s because he started having parts in movies where he was recognized. He did a lot of bit parts in a lot of classic westerns where he wasn't credited, or his credit would be man number 5. He wouldn't have, big roles where you would know who he was. But in the 80s, he became essentially a very good character actor. I know him from, 3 movies, including this one. It was he was in The Natural. He was in Misery. He played the sheriff in Misery. He does a great job in that classic Rob Reiner film. and he is in this film, The Straight Story. So Richard Farnsworth's performance in this movie is magnificent. It is it is a very low key but very deep performance. You can see in his face, in his age, and the way he delivers the lines. He seems like a very straightforward, gentle man, but you can tell, obviously he's lived a full life with a lot of turmoil and a lot of things that have happened that have not been great. And as the movie unfolds, you kind of get little glimpses into what his life was like, the reasons behind his estrangement from his brother, also some backstory on Rose, on something that happened to her that was very tragic as well. And these things being revealed as the movie goes along just gives it a very deep, resonant feeling as you're watching it, and it's fantastic, and it's really, really, really well done. His performance is phenomenal, and as the movie progresses, the performance gets deeper, and as you find out more about Alvin, it's fantastic. Now, Sissy Spacek is Rose, of course. Fantastic actress in her own right as well. It was great to see her in this movie. She does a good job playing Rose. She doesn't get much to do because she's in the beginning of the film, and there's a couple scenes where he calls her to check in. But it's a good, great performance. And I know in doing the research, Sissy Spacek actually has a deep friendship with David Lynch, and actually helped finance his first film, Eraserhead. So they have a friendship that goes back decades, and she's very good in this movie as well. So again, as the movie progresses, he's going, he's going on the road. He's meeting these people in the attempt to get to see his brother. The music in the film, his collaborator, David Lynch's collaborator, Angelo Badalamenti, who again for me is most famous for his score for Twin Peaks, just a unique thing. His music is used minimally here because it's a very quiet movie, but the music when it's introduced is really, really good. And I really noticed it because it's not very used very frequently, but when it is, it definitely adds to the film as well. And there are other great performances in the movie as well. There's a bunch of actors I'm not aware of. There's great scenes in the beginning before he starts his journey with his friends in Lawrence, Iowa, and just old curmudgeonly friends that have been friends for decades. The people that he meets along the way. There is a pregnant hitchhiker that he meets along the way and talks to her, has a deep conversation about what she's doing and what's going on with her. And those are the things, as I said, that bring the richness and depth to the story and to this film. And again, it just makes it all the more enjoyable to watch. And like I said, you find out about Alvin and about more about him as the movie goes along. And there's really several just very moving scenes. Anytime Alvin gets kind of deeper into his own backstory, you find out something very deep about him and the things that have shaped his life. And like I said, shaped his estrangement from his brother, who he's going to see. And the great Harry Dean Stanton plays Alvin's brother, who has a stroke, and you don't see him till the very end of the film. And one of the things about The Straight Story, which is fantastic, is the tone is very well done. So in a movie normally like this, you would expect an estrangement, some, confrontation of brothers that have been estranged, and then eventually either a reconciliation or however a movie like that would wrap up. In the case of this film, it maintains its simple, straightforward tone throughout, including when Alvin reaches his destination. Like I said, in this type of film, that's not really a spoiler alert. Like I said, this is a true story. I think saying that he's gonna get there is not something that's gonna spoil the movie, and it's not really the point of the movie. The point of the movie really is the journey for Alvin. So it's important for Alvin to see his brother, especially with his brother possibly passing away due to the stroke, and talking to him, and whatever the term you may want to use, reconcile, to see him again and to make this journey by himself. That was what was important to him, to do it on his own, to do it without any help. He's a man that, again, old school, he's stubborn. He does things on his own. He doesn't look for charity. He doesn't look for help. But I think it was important for him to get there on his own and to really deeply look inward as he was making this journey on his own, about what he was going to do when he sees his brother, just everything in his life up to that point. And it's important for him, and that is reinforced throughout the film, again in a very simple, straightforward, quiet way, just like Alvin Straight himself. And again, it's a beautiful movie. It is. I remember it when I saw it the first time, being a beautiful movie, but rewatching it, it's fantastic. And with David Lynch, obviously people know his more extravagant, flamboyant work in the movies that I've mentioned before, like Blue Velvet and Wild at Heart and Mulholland Drive, and all those places that he, all those themes that he explores in those films as well. But as with Elephant Man, David Lynch can tell a very emotional story. And even in these other films that I've named, and especially like for me, Twin Peaks, he can tap into an emotional place and emotional truths very well. He's very talented. He was very talented at it. And this film is a perfect example of that. And again, it's a beautiful movie with a beautiful lead performance by Richard Farnsworth. It's, every scene he's in, it's just captivating, and watching him really do just a beautiful, beautiful job of acting, and really carrying this movie with this performance. It's wonderful. I can't say enough about it. And I'm glad I rewatched it, and I'm glad I decided to review it for this podcast. So I'm going to go ahead and give The Straight Story, directed by David Lynch, I'm going to give it 4.5 stars out of 5. So on that scale, this is definitely a wonderful, wonderful film. And I highly recommend it if you have not seen it. I think probably a lot of people have not seen it. I think it did okay in the theaters. Richard Farnsworth received an Academy Award nomination for this performance, deservedly so. He was the oldest nominee to be nominated. He actually, unfortunately, passed away about a year, I think, after the movie was released. So it was his last film role. And he won the Golden Globe, I think, for Best Actor for this performance. And again, the screenplay is fantastic. There's several sequences in the film with conversations between two people, whether it's Alvin and the pregnant hitchhiker Alvin, and a priest at a cemetery where he stops at one of his stops on his way. Just fantastic, deep, very well written conversations that lend to these great performances by both Farnsworth and the actors he's playing against in those scenes. It's wonderful. And it's a, like I said, it's a quiet, straightforward, minimal film. And I mean that in the best kind of way, and eminently watchable, and just a beautiful movie. So again, I'm going to give The Straight Story 4.5 stars out of 5. I highly recommend you watch it if you have not seen it. And if you are a David Lynch fan, and you have not seen this movie, I would definitely check it out. Like I said, it is funny that, in David Lynch's filmography, he has a Disney movie that's rated G. So that just makes it kind of a more beautiful tribute to him, that he could do anything that he wanted as far as making films. And I'm glad he took this kind of detour from what he normally did to make just a beautiful, beautiful movie. So again, I'm giving The Straight Story 4.5 stars out of 5. So to all the listeners and watchers of the show out there, again, I want to say thank you, as I do every episode, for checking the show out. It's great to kind of look at the download numbers, and they are going up. Part of it is because one of the other promise I made for this year is to release more. Is up now for My Cousin in short order. Like I said, I'm going to make an aggressive effort to put out more shows. One, because I enjoy doing it, and whenever I can steal time away to discuss a movie, I want to get out there and do it. So I'm going to continue to do that. I'm going to continue to make that pledge. Again, if you can share the posts for the new episodes on your social media, especially on X, I would appreciate that. If you can click and subscribe to the video channel that you would watch this on, I would appreciate that as well. And if you listen to the show primarily wherever you listen to it, please subscribe and rate and review. I really want to grow the show. And again, if you can financially support it, please do so as well. That is greatly appreciated. You can email the show. The email is bendyourearpodcast@gmail.com. Or if you're on X, you can always DM me there. I talk movies there all the time, and I enjoy doing that. So again, I want to thank all the audience that's helping me to grow this show. I want to aggressively try to get more listeners, aggressively to try to get more viewers to the YouTube and the Rumble. If you're not on Rumble, I am a big fan of Rumble as well. I'm a big proponent of free speech. Just as a little side note, I have another podcast that I haven't done called Amendment One. When I pop on there very occasionally if there's an issue that sparks me free speech wise. So if you want, you can subscribe to there. You can subscribe to it on Rumble, and it's also available on Spotify. If you want to just click and subscribe to that, I will pop on episodes if something kind of tickles my fancy regarding the free speech arena. But this is my main show, and I love doing it, and I appreciate all the support. Thank you so much. I enjoy doing this podcast. It's something that makes me very happy to do, and I'm glad that people are finding it and listening to it and continuing to listen. So thank you again so much. So again, to wrap up, The Straight Story, directed by David Lynch, I'm giving 4.5 stars out of 5. And again, thank you for everyone for watching and for listening. And I will be back hopefully very soon again with another episode of a movie to review and discuss. Thanks, everybody. Take care.